now less dramatic of a difference you see in the use of the internet for information. That's because, partly, almost everybody in Britain is relying more on the internet for information. I think there's a very interesting difference between Poland and the UK. I'd really love to hear what people make of this. But in Britain, people trust the information they can get online about as much as they do on broadcast television. Almost equivalent. They actually trust information they get online more than in newspapers and radio, for example. Over 30%, probably 30 to 40% of people in Britain say that the internet is essential for their information needs. That is, they don't know what they would do if they don't have access to the internet, because that's the first place people go for information for almost everything they do. I often call this the Obama syndrome, where Barack Obama, when he was elected president, he didn't know what to do because they wouldn't let him have his BlackBerry. And he didn't know what he was going to do without it because it became an essential part of his life. And so they figured out how he could use the BlackBerry as president. Many more people, you know, how many times do you look around and you say, how did I ever do this without the internet? And it's, so anyway, information needs are absolutely essential for a growing proportion of people in Britain. It's very curious that people are less trustful of the information they get online in Poland. But again, it's a different body of content that we're talking about in different languages and so forth. But you can see even then, next generation users are significantly more likely to rely on the internet for information as well. Obviously, next generation users are likely to use the internet more on the move, but partly that's by definition. But you see that every single location is much more prominent for the next generation users. They're using it at their neighbor's house, internet cafes, on the move, every single location, at work, at school, public libraries. The next generation user is moving around and using the internet instead of being anchored in the household. And I'd like to make sure that I'm not being misunderstood, because I think consistently with the survey in Poland is that the PC in the home remains a very fundamental anchor to the internet. And a lot of people thought that if you move towards appliances like tablet computers, that you would dumb down the internet and basically replace the PC, and therefore have a less generative, less open, less creative internet. And what we're finding is not that, actually. What we're finding is the PC still remains. It could be a laptop, it could be a PC, but there's still the home, a significant PC or laptop in the home remains the anchor to the internet. But you have all sorts of other devices that extend and complement what you do at the home. So readers, tablets, and so forth allow you to bring the internet with you and use it seamlessly elsewhere at all these various other locations. Is it just the born digital? I don't like the born digital idea, because I've been using the internet since 1974. And I think these kids have no idea. I was using the internet before they were even a twinkle in anybody's eye. So I don't want to say they were born digital or that they have any advantage over older people. But clearly, it's not just a younger generation that's the next generation user, okay? Students and employed are about equally likely to be next generation users. Where you really see a huge drop off the cliff is with retired or retirement age people. So they are not next generation users. So why are some students and why are some employed not next generation users? How can we define those? One of the most significant factors is income. So higher income groups are much more likely to have multiple devices and smartphones and tablets and readers and laptop computers that are much more mobile and versatile. So we have a new digital divide. You know, people are worried about a digital divide, not because some people have it. I mean, if some people don't have something, and obviously in Poland, a lot of people who do not have a computer or access to the internet don't care about it, don't think it's of any value. But of course, we know that having access to the internet follows and reinforces social and economic divides in society. More educated people, wealthier people have access to the internet, and they do get advantages. It's that people do not have access to the internet, don't get it. They do. The internet is an experience technology. It is not, you can explain the internet to somebody, just like you can explain a search engine to somebody, or you can explain social networking to somebody. But nobody understands it unless they use the internet, or use a search engine, or use social networking. They, once they do, and they have experience using it, they, you know, aha, wow, you can do that, or I can find this. So this idea of an experience technology is very important, and it's the biggest challenge of getting older people or non-users to use the internet, because they don't understand it until they experience it, and they don't think they need to experience it because they don't think they need it. So it's a real conundrum of how you get over this experience gap. You mentioned paying for services. It's interesting. There's it's very interesting finding. These are marginal differences, but next generation users are more likely to pay for services, somewhat more likely to pay for services. But not a lot of people are paying for services. I mean, that generally, this is a new trend, paying for services, I guess. But what I find most interesting is how appropriate it is to pay for new services. Next generation users are also, it says, is it appropriate to download music without paying? Well, next generation users are more likely to agree. So both next generation users are more likely to pay for services, but they're also more likely to agree that it's often appropriate not to pay. So there's no simplistic pay versus not pay. Next generation users and more experienced internet users realize that there's some things you pay for and some things you shouldn't, and some things that make sense to pay for, some things that are extortionate to actually pay for because they're charged too much, or they think it's silly to pay for some types of information. So we've got a really complex set of attitudes about payment online. You can also see that next generation users are less concerned about privacy. Even though they use the internet more, they generate more user-generated content than first-generation users and non-users. They are the less concerned about privacy, although they are concerned about privacy online. Most internet people, most people have a high level of concern about the privacy of personal information. However, what's going on here is the experience technology. The people who are most frightened about the internet in terms of privacy or surveillance and so forth are those people who have never used the internet. And generally, again, it's an experience technology. People who have experience online realize that they can do certain things without high risk. But they do not develop a blind trust in the internet or a silly optimism. They have a learned level of skepticism, but they are less skeptical than people who have never used the internet. And you can also see this reflected in the next generation users being somewhat more likely to share information online. Some information in order to get a service, to use a credit card, for example, to get something from a bookseller online and what have you. They'll be much more prone to do that. And they're also supportive of freedom of expression, more supportive of freedom of expression, but everyone in Britain is basically supportive of freedom of expression online. People should be able to express opinion anonymously. More than, even non-users, more than half of non-users believe that that's true. And that most people believe that censorship has no place in a free society. Again, only a 30-some% believe that that's not true.